Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I'm your host, Harry Fling, and today's topic of the day, we're going to be covering the best finishing maneuvers of all time, in my opinion, of course. And some of these moves, you'll be surprised because they're not moves that, many of them are not the finishing maneuvers that you hear about constantly, like Sweet Chin Music, the Tombstone, the Batista Bomb, the Stone Cold Stunner, what have you. I'm going to be choosing some, well, there might be a few that are popular that I really love to death, and then there's a few that, might sound obscure, but I'm going to teach you and show you what they are and describe it to you. So before we get into that, a finishing move, for those who aren't familiar with the wrestling savvy talk here, finishing maneuvers is how you close out a match. When your opponent is weakened and he's stunned, or she, could be a female too, he or she is stunned, you have to go for the jugular and pull the trigger and nail the move that is special to you and you only. And so for a lot of people, it's a move that only they could do for some, or it could be one that was that they picked up while they were touring another country like England, Mexico, Japan, what have you. And it all depends on the wrestling style. Like someone who's ground and pound might do a brawling type finisher, like the bro kick from Sheamus, for instance. High cross at that. Excuse me. Woman's a high flyer, like an Evan Bourne. He'd do a shooting star press. Billy Kidman. 619, Rey Mysterio, more popular example. Submission, like Bret Hart and the Sharpshooter. Daniel Bryan with the label lock, which was later changed more popularly to the yes lock. So you get the gist of how this works. So I've looked at about 8 different finishing maneuvers. I'd put these in my top 8 if I could. I used to have a whole list of these, and I tried to look for it somewhere in some old crap storage, but obviously it was never to be found. So it's not meant to be, then it's not meant to be. But certainly we can derive some great finishing maneuvers from just watching wrestling in the past. Derived from past experiences, as I like to say. So here we go. We'll start with my favorite one, and it's actually probably the most dangerous finishing maneuver in all of professional wrestling, and it is largely banned in the United States. I don't know about other countries. I'm talking about the Vertebreaker. Most famously used by Gregory Helms, Shane Helms. He was Sugar Shane Helms in the last 2 months of WCW when he debuted the Vertebreaker. Then he used it as Hurricane Helms for a while, and then he stopped using it because when he became the Hurricane, he resorted to using the Nightmare on Helm Street, which actually was changed to later appropriately fit the gimmick Eye of the Hurricane. Nightmare on Helm Street was pretty sick too. That was like a running clothesline into a reverse DDT combination sort of thing. But the Vertebreaker is a double underhook pile driver. Your opponent is upside down behind you, back to back. Your opponent lands on their neck. And it's bad for that reason alone. Any move where an opponent lands on his or her neck, it can't be good at all. Broken necks are the worst possible injury to ever come out of professional wrestling. Excuse me. That's why the style was so toned down come late 2003, early 2004, somewhere around there. Used to be a lot of high spots, but now it's a lot of rest holds to kill time. Because too many neck injuries at that time. You had Rhino, Edge, and you had Lita, but that was from filming a TV show episode rather. And so the Vertebreaker altogether was banned, but I remember in like 2003 on a couple episodes of Sunday Night Heat when the Hurricane would use it on guys like Stevie Richards or Maven, whoever was competing at the time on the Raw roster, lower card guys. So he got away with it on a smaller scale, but this were on Raw, and he was facing The Rock, and something happened to The Rock, that'd be a whole nother story, whole different story altogether. That wouldn't end well for Shane Gregory Helms, probably out of the wrestling business just like that. Vertebreaker is a cool-ass move, but don't try this at home, and I'm very serious when I say this to everyone out there. Necks can get broken, and careers will end in an instant. I took that right off the "Don't Try This at Home" ad from WWE Home Video back in the day. They showed draws being carried out. It could make somebody end up paraplegic, and they won't feel a damn thing from here down. So, don't do the Vertebreaker. And it became a theme song, too. In the last 2 months of WCW, Shane Helms left 3 Count, Evan Courageous, and Shannon Moore, and went out on his own with the moniker Sugar Shane Helms. And that name stuck with me for a long time. I had no idea it only lasted less than 2 months. And his theme song was appropriately titled For the breaker! Dun, 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 dun. For the breaker! It's the original KID. Started out 91 in the state of NC. Okay, well, I better quit while I'm ahead. Stop it right there. So, anyways, the Vertebreaker, check it out. There's so many videos of it, and it's cool on impact. But as for the long term, you can't use it all that much. Next favorite finishing maneuver of mine is actually probably the most famous one on this list, the RKO / Diamond Cutter / Ace Crusher. If it weren't for John Laurinaitis, we wouldn't be talking about this move. And I'm not the biggest Johnny Ace fan in the world. Johnny Ace, back in the mid-'80s, before the Dynamic Dudes and the NWA, he used to use a finisher called the Ace Crusher, which is a forward neckbreaker bulldog with a sudden impact, and you can get a running start like you see Randy Orton do on his RKO. DDP did the same thing, Diamond Dallas Page with the Diamond Cutter. So the Ace Crusher is where it all started, because you'll catch somebody out of nowhere, and boom, just like that, you'll hit them. They even named a DVD, for heaven's sake, out of this called RKO Out of Nowhere. And it's not Randy Orton's, biography or documentary, but it just shows the best moments from that singular finishing maneuver done by Randy Orton himself. So Orton really popularized it in most recent time, but when I was a kid, it was Diamond Dallas Page with the Diamond Cutter. And for a brief stint in the summer of 2000, Chris Kanyon took over the DDP gimmick altogether and dubbed himself Positively Kanyon, based on Page's book, Positively Page. And guess what? He renamed the move the Canyon Cutter. Canyon Cutter! And I remember him doing it to Judy Bagwell, and that led to the infamous Judy Bagwell in a pole match, which I'm not going to get into, forklift, whatever. Certainly not going to get into that now. But the Canyon Cutter was good, and then of course it was better when it was the Diamond Cutter, because he was the originator, so to speak, of the Diamond Cutter, if we're just talking about that move alone. And then of course Randy Orton came along, and he used, I think it was called the Ozone or something, Overdrive. That was his original finisher, where he put his leg right over the guy's neck and just kind of rolled him over. That was early days of Randy Orton, but then the RKO just kind of came about, I want to say, in mid-2003, by the time he joined Evolution, and just been using it ever since. RKO out of nowhere. And the way someone sells it, anyone sells it, it's just remarkable. They'll just lie there dead, motionless for who knows how long, so who the hell knows. But a great move, nevertheless. Here's a one that's very exotic coming up next. This was made famous by one Perry Saturn, 2000, 2001 WWF. The moss-covered, three-handled family credenza. What? I said the moss-covered, three-handled family credenza. That is basically a twisting fisherman suplex with theatrics. So I think he would signal for it. Sometimes a wrestler will use a lot of theatrics. They'll go do something like this. Who used to do that? I think it was like Bruce Beefcake. He used to go like this when he would walk in the sleeper. Or sometimes like when Too Cold Scorpio go for the 450 splash, he'd signal it like this. It's just theatrics, taunts, what have you. That's the acting side of pro wrestling. And he would do something like that and then immediately go for the fisherman suplex, which Mr. Perfect made famous with the Perfect Plex. Love the Perfect Plex. I don't want to get too off topic here. Love Kurt Hennig. We'll talk about him another time maybe. But it's a twisting fisherman suplex and then just a lot of theatrics. So it's kind of a quick whiplash type move, just like that. The fisherman suplex, you just hold them over like that, and then their leg is hooked, and go for the 3 count. And what else was I going to say? Yeah, and there's a little twisting motion, I believe, before the move is executed. So it makes it just a little bit different, and I have no idea how the hell they ever came up with that name. Moss-covered, three-handled family credenza. Paul Heyman on commentary, or Taz, would used to sell it like crazy. Oh my God, he's going for the moss-covered, three-handled family credenza! That's Paul Heyman right there. And I had no idea what the fuck they were talking about. As long as I've known Perry Saturn, going back to WCW, Ravens Flock days, he always did the Rings of Saturn. I always forget how that went. I think it was like a neckbreaker DDT. I didn't do much research on the Rings of Saturn because I wanted to talk about this move instead. But then over time, I guess he wanted to change things up, and it kind of worked out. He became kind of a Looney Tunes type character after receiving too many shots to the head with a steel chair. And taking too many blows to the head, no less, and then that's how Moppy entered the picture here. And he became infatuated with the mop that he thought was living and breathing, just like us human beings. All right, this next move here, diehard wrestling fans will totally appreciate, and if they don't, then there's something wrong with you. The Lion Tamer. Not the Walls of Jericho, the Lion Tamer. I know from experience because a friend put me in it, and it hurts like fucking hell. Right on your back. Ooh, maybe that's why I have back problems to this day. No, that was a nice little segue, though. You got to admit, that was pretty good. A Lion Tamer is basically a Boston Crab with applied pressure to your back via the kneecap. Oh, you thought the Boston Crab was bad enough, and it's just, your back is totally arched. This is worse. The Lion Tamer, and I had it put in. It hurt like hell. I wanted to scream. It was so bad. Oh, man. But when he did that in ECW, he did in Japan, because he was the Lionheart, Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho is the man made famous for this move, and we give him all the thanks in the world. Did it in Japan. He did it in ECW, and then in WCW, especially in that legendary feud with Dean Malenko over the 1,001 holds, the giant list that he carried. It was sort of a precursor, if you think about it, to the list gimmick that he did much later on in his career in the late 2010s. You just made the list! I don't know what he does in AEW. They couldn't call it that, obviously, because that's WWE's thing, copyrighted. So, yes, the Lion Tamer. And I remember he reused it at ECW One Night Stand 2005 in his match against Lance Storm, Chris Jericho did. He came out as the Lionheart. His hair was much shorter in 05 compared to, like 95, 96, when it was all the way down to his back. He put on some muscle mass, so he was a little bit stockier, Jericho was at that time, a bit bigger. And, yeah, he instead of Jericho coming down the side of his boots, his kick pads, it just said Lionheart. Or just Lion or something, and there was really no Y2J to speak of in that gimmick, and it was a retro old school event commemorating ECW and its glory days and everything that it stood for, and this was not talking about the trash cans and tables and ladders and chairs or whatever. This is more about the pure wrestling abilities, the agility, the technical prowess of two men telling a story on that canvas in that ring. That ring is their canvas. If we were to use an art analogy, they are the artists telling the story. They're painting the picture with their wrestling moves. I'm talking about Chris Jericho and Lance Storm. So they didn't need weapons. Almost would have been insulting to include that just because it would underscore the amount of talent that they possess, or they've always possessed for that matter. So the Lion Tamer will always have a special place in my heart, and I was in college when that happened, so it's about 1920, 21, give or take. So I was more man enough that I could take it back then, so it's okay. It's all good. No hard feelings. This next move, my older brother put me in this when I was probably about 6 or 7, maybe 8 years old, right around the time I started watching. It was made famous by Mr. Bob Backlund. I'm talking about the crossface chicken wing. It's basically a reverse crossface. The perpetrator has their arm right in front of your neck, and they're twisting your other arm back, and you're being choked out to death while having your shoulder dislodged from its socket. So I remember when I was young, he said, "Harry, I got a surprise for you." What? Chicken wing! Ah, 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 ah. Now, mind you, he didn't execute it to the point of exhaustion, so fortunately I never actually passed out. But it hurt like hell. You have an older brother that's almost, bigger than you, and I'm just this young little scrawny little boy, kid, and so my body probably couldn't take the pain as much. But we were boys or brothers growing up, so of course we're going to roughhouse a little bit. It's to be expected. So it's funny looking back. It's hilarious, actually. Backlund actually played this gimmick so well, not just trying to run for president, fake president that is, but the way he tried to use big words without knowing what they fully meant, make himself more educated than what he had appeared to be or what he was portraying himself as. And the chicken wing, he used that back in the late 70s, early 80s during that long 6-year title reign for the WWE Championship. And it's a move, you still see it every now and again. It's probably more so used in MMA than professional wrestling. And this one had a lot of theatrics because Backlund would actually go, insanely crazy when he would apply the hold. he would get this look in his eye as he was executing the hold, and then when he was finished, it was like, look at the damage I just did. He'd look at his hands, and he'd have this gaze, this stare, this blank gaze, this blank stare. Just like that, his eyes would bug out, wide open. Oof, it played perfectly to that character. It was just borderline insane, if you really think about it. But it worked perfectly for Bobby. So, chicken wing it is. I have a couple of tag team moves I want to cover, and then we got one move from one of the ladies here, one of our female superstars, a Hall of Famer, in fact, but we'll get to her in a little bit. I'm talking about the Demolition Decapitation. I met Demolition 2 years ago, Axe and Smash. Crush unfortunately passed away many years ago. But the originals, Bill Eadie and Barry Darsow, I met them in Philly at WrestleCon Philadelphia, WrestleMania 40 weekend. I was there for night one with my brother and my cousin. And they're nice guys deep down. I asked about what happened in 1990, why the team needed Crush, and Axe took a back seat. It was about the shellfish, which I read about, but I wanted to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, if you catch my drift. I want to hear what they have to say, because then they'll tell you stuff that the internet doesn't always post, so you can't trust everything you read, folks, okay? So Demolition, that was their finishing maneuver as a tag team, the decapitation. Axe would hold the guy who was arched on his knee, flat on his back, completely horizontal, while Smash would hold the guy, while Axe would deliver an elbow from the second rope right on their sternum, so it was almost like a decapitation. That's why it's called Demolition Decapitation. Boom! That's how they won so many tag titles and won so many matches, and it was as devastating as their appearance walking down that ring. Demolition, one of the greatest tag teams of all time. Great theme song to boot by Rick Derringer. Here comes the axe, and here comes the smasher, the demolition, walking disaster. And the metal gear that they would wear, it almost looked kind of Dominatrix-esque, if you will, but I don't think that was the direction they were going for. It was just basically black, black trunks with, black suspenders going all the way around their chest. They had face paint, which looked menacing. They had these helmets they would wear, and they'd take it off, they go, oh my God, something straight out of a horror movie. Freddy versus Jason, whatever. The whole imagery, the whole gimmick. See, the 80s and 90s did so well with these gimmicks. Not to say the 2000s weren't great, but I feel like they kind of dropped off a little bit after the Attitude Era as they were trying to bring more realism into wrestling. So, yeah, that's a whole other topic for another day, but it really makes you think as we're discussing this. So, great move on the part of Demolition. Another tag team, I'd like to mention the Hart Foundation. Bret Hitman Hart, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart with the Heart Attack. Heart Attack with H-A-R-T, not a real, heart attack, medical heart attack. Though that wouldn't, nothing good can come from that. That's a serious thing, obviously. Heart Attack was a running clothesline spine buster double team. So, Jim the Anvil Neidhart would hold the guy up, arched as if he was ready to give him a spine buster, which he did, and Bret would come running with a clothesline, and then the clothesline, the spine buster would connect, and that's the Heart Attack. They won many a match with that, many tag titles, many matches. I especially remember WrestleMania 6 when they took on the Bolsheviks. The Hearts deserved a longer match, given that was in Toronto that year. Bolsheviks, Nikolai Volkov was singing the Russian national anthem, and then Bret and Jim interrupt, and in 19 seconds they hit the Heart Attack, and the Bolsheviks didn't even have a chance to take their ring jackets off, and the match was over, just like that. So a great move, and I wish that would come back. It did. 2009, 2010, when we had the Hart Dynasty, David Hart Smith and Tyson Kidd, they would do the same move with Smith holding the guy, and Kidd would do the clothesline. Smith and Kidd, Hart Dynasty, and you had Smith and Kidd, Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid, and the British Bulldogs. So a lot of connections here. I love it. It's fun when these things all come together. The last move I'm going to cover here is has been performed and made famous by one of the greatest female superstars of all time. 2021 class Hall of Famer, Molly Holly. Molly Holly made famous the Molly Go Round, which was a somersault plancha off the top rope. So she'd do like a complete spin and then land right on the chest of her opponent. And the Molly go round was such a sick move, dude. I can't even get over it. You look at it, and I'm like, damn, I didn't know she could go to those lengths as far as high flying is concerned. Lita was the big high flyer with the moonsault, and so many people have done the moonsault time and time again, and it doesn't make it any less special, but Lita was the first to do it for the ladies, because the ladies weren't taking high risks at that time. They're doing it all the time now, that they're given all the freedom to wrestle and whatnot, but back then, it was limited to a select few. Lita and Molly Holly now being the next, with the Molly go round. And the Molly go round, it's just amazing visuals to look at. And it's not the most dangerous move. Not as dangerous as the vertebreakers we alluded to earlier, but it certainly has its risks. If she doesn't land right, she could actually tear a meniscus or something, or a patella. Any tendon could rupture. So there's always that. There's always a risk to the reward here. Risk versus reward you have to look at in professional wrestling, especially with these finishing maneuvers, the dangerous ones, no less. So I know there's a billion other moves we could talk about, but we'd be here all night, and I don't want to bore you all to death. So I just wanted to share with my select few that I had, and thank you for letting me do so. And it's been another great edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and until next time, everybody, bye-bye.